Some think Bing Crosby's heart betrayed him, despite his angelic voice. He was an iconic figure throughout the holiday season and a Hollywood legend to the rest of the globe. However, a shadowy side existed beneath all the charisma and the flash of the camera. The kids in his care expressed fears. Addiction was a problem for his first wife. Something was amiss, even to his co-stars. I don't understand how someone so adored could keep so many secrets. Was it fame that transformed him? Was he evading detection the whole time? Or what? Come with us as we investigate the musician's background and the terrible truths he left behind. A young man concealed by his moniker. Bing Crosby was born Harry Lillies Crosby Jr., but he was known as a little boy before that. He was born on May 3, 1903, in Tacoma, Washington, to parents whose names were Harry and who had constructed their home themselves. However, Bing's parents, the Crosbys, uprooted and relocated to Spokane when he was just 3 years old. His father constructed an additional home there. It is now a museum housing many of Bing's personal belongings. His Oscar included. Bing belongs to a large family. Out of 7 siblings, he was the fourth. 2 sisters and 4 brothers made up his family. His father's family was from Scotland and England, while his mother Kate was from Ireland. Even the Mayflower brought one of Bing's relatives to the New World. There was a lot of life and activity at home. As a teenager, Bing worked as a summer employee at Spokane's auditorium, where he had his first experience in the entertainment industry. He witnessed Al Jolson's performance there. He went on to say that Jolson had an irresistible energy on stage. That was the moment that changed his life. Bing, that well-known moniker, is up next. For a long time, Crosby enjoyed making up a humorous tale to explain how he obtained it. His explanation was that he had played cops and robbers when he was a child. He would play with toy firearms as if they were real and shout out, "Bing, bing," whenever he was bored. This tale was even shared by him on a live radio program alongside Joan Blondell. "I can't believe they didn't refer to you as Killer Crosby when she made that joke." Laughing, he claimed it to be true. Though that was not the case. The story wasn't real. The real-life Valentine Hobart began referring to him as Bingo from Bingville after reading the comic strip in the Bingville Bugle, which was published in the local paper. Bing was a huge fan of that comic. The name remained. Bing became the abbreviation in due time. After the fact, even Crosby and his biographer acknowledged this as the true source. However, the entertaining version was fine with him. Because of this, his childhood seemed more interesting. However, the reality was intriguing in and of itself. A little town with huge aspirations. Even though Bing had a mediocre academic career, his talent shone through. After finishing high school at Gonzaga in 1920, he enrolled in Gonzaga University. He remained a student for 3 years, but never earned a diploma. Regardless, his impact was felt. On the baseball team at his university, he even played. His childhood home was made into a museum, and he was later awarded an honorary degree by Gonzaga. More than 200 artifacts pertaining to his life and work are currently housed there. Even if school was a part of his story, the draw of music was stronger. In 1923, Bing became a member of a high school band that featured some of the younger kids. The Musicalators were their name. In addition to Mildred Bailey, a singer, Al and Miles Rinker were among the others in the ensemble. The drummer was Bing. Around Spokane, they performed at school dances and local nightclubs. Some even went so far as to perform live on the radio. At that moment, it was quite significant. On the other hand, the group broke up after 2 years. But neither they nor Al Rinker were prepared to surrender. They found employment at Spokane's Clemmer Theater. In addition to showing movies on the large screen, they also put on live performances. The Clemmer Trio was their original name. The Clemmer Entertainers were their later name. They played for 12 weeks in a row to packed houses. Unfortunately, not even that sufficed. There had to be more for Bing and Al. They uprooted their lives in Spokane and headed west to California in October 1925. Their goal was to become famous. They were fortunate to have assistance. They were introduced to individuals in the entertainment industry by Mildred Bailey. All it took was just one connection to unlock opportunities they hadn't even considered. Finally, the 2 young men were making their way. Everything changed after a break. When Bing and Al arrived in Los Angeles, they were finally discovered. The syncopation idea evaluation was commissioned by the Fanchin and Marco Time Agency, who employed them. After kicking up at the Boulevard Theater, the performance made its way through the Loews circuit. The 2 teenage performers were paid $75 per week, which was quite a little for their time. Even though they were just supporting cast members, Bing and Al stole the show. Everyone loved their carefree attitude and lively performance. Among college students, they became a part of the Will Morrissey Music Hall Review when that performance concluded. They honed their abilities even further with the employment. They were gaining experience in the entertainment industry by performing night after night. The turning point in Bing's life then arrived. Someone from Paul Whiteman's crew spotted them one night when they were playing. When it came to music, Whiteman was a household name. In order to breathe new life into his performance, he needed new talent. To his delight, Bing and Al met all of his requirements. Whiteman offered them a position in 1926 with a weekly salary of $150, which was twice their previous wage. They made their debut alongside him at Chicago's Tivoli Theater on December 6th. Quite an improvement, that. Their debut single, I've Got the Girl, was recorded later that year using an orchestra conducted by Don Clark. But a minor accident did occur. Their voices came out sounding higher than they actually were since the music was recorded at a slower pace and then played back at a normal speed. Nonetheless, their forward impetus was unabated. Bing had finally made it, and he'd never forgotten how it all began. Mildred Bailey was the one he frequently thanked for facilitating his initial major break. Achieving fame was just the start. In his time with Whiteman, Bing's career took off. In the blink of an eye, he went from performing with a little group to performing with the most famous artists of his day. Everyone adored his voice, his fashion sense, and his easygoing charisma. Bing, however, was already adept at shaping his image even in his formative years. His recollection of playing cops and robbers was more than just a charming anecdote. The narrative had been handpicked. It brought out his carefree, innocent, and energetic side. However, his true story was filled with more darkness than light, as we will see in the next sections. Decisions, pressure, and unspoken suffering filled his past. Still, his early life story, moving from Tacoma to Spokane and eventually to Hollywood, illustrated the incredible distance that skill and determination can carry a person. He came from humble beginnings, worked tirelessly, and seized every opportunity that came his way. He began performing in school auditoriums, moved on to radio, and eventually hit the largest stages in the United States. However, there was a man hiding secrets behind the glitz, glamour, and wealth. The public's perception of Bing Crosby changed drastically as those revelations came to light. Even though the allure persisted, the truth could not remain concealed indefinitely. How the Rhythm Boys rose to fame. Paul Whiteman's association with Bing Crosby paved the way. However, once the party arrived in New York, things took a turn for the worst. Whiteman considered just firing them. When Crosby and Rinker were joined by pianist Harry Barris, it was the moment. The Rhythm Boys was the moniker given to the trio. The inclusion of Barris had a significant impact. The three of them had great chemistry, and his voice helped them fill those massive New York venues. As he gained genuine experience performing and recording with jazz greats like Bix Beiderbecke, Jack Teagarden, and Tommy Dorsey, Crosby rose to stardom during this time. Crosby had his first #1 hit by 1928 with his cover of Old Man River. The next year, he co-starred with the Rhythm Boys and Whiteman in the film King of Jazz. However, Crosby was dissatisfied. The Rhythm Boys quit the group as he began to feel constrained by Whiteman's management. They were a part of the Gus Arnheim Orchestra and played at the Ambassador Hotel's Coconut Grove. Even though the Rhythm Boys were still playing as a unit, Crosby's solos were the showstopper. Your Command and I Surrender Dear are only two of the numerous popular songs that Harry Barris composed for Bing. Crosby, meanwhile, had already inked a solo film deal with Max Sennett by 1931. It was the last push. Bing was prepared to go it alone as the Rhythm Boys were beginning to fade. He wed actress Dixie Lee at about the same time. After she threatened to end the marriage in 1931, Crosby redoubled his efforts in his professional life. An iconic voice that shook the world. With the release of 15 Minutes with Bing Crosby on September 2, 1931, Bing Crosby made his solo radio debut. His meteoric rise to fame was almost instantaneous. He inked deals with CBS Radio and Brunswick Records in the same year. Hit after hit came out of his mouth. Just One More Chance, Out of Nowhere, and At Your Command were massive hits. Actually, Crosby's name was on 10 of the top 50 songs of 1931. People started comparing him to another baritone, Russ Columbo, because of how quickly he was rising to fame. However, that was short-lived. Bing was King became the dominant slogan very quickly. Before landing a full-length film role in the 1932 major broadcast, he co-starred with Max Sennett in a string of musical comedies. After that picture, a long career in the film industry began. He went on to star in 55 films, out of approximately 80 total. Between 1934 and 1935, Crosby was a member of both Paramount and Decca, Jack Kapp's new record company. Around that time, his first major radio sponsor, Cremo Cigars, came on board. At this point, Crosby's fame was beginning to ripple across the nation. He was a household name in the United States thanks to his radio broadcasts, films, and albums. Records sold by Crosby continued to sell even when the economy was in a deep slump due to the Great Depression. Bing rescued the record industry in 1934, according to audio engineer Steve Hoffman, by assisting Decca in reducing record pricing and collecting royalties rather than flat fees. That astute decision ensured the survival of the music industry. Crosby's fame continued to soar. After the birth of his first son, Gary, in 1933, he welcomed twin boys the following year. He succeeded Paul Whiteman as presenter of Kraft Music Hall on NBC in 1936. I was employed there for a decade. Where the Night Sky Meets the Day became an integral element of his persona, serving as the theme tune. How about his voice? It shifted the entire dynamic. Crosby used the microphone in a gentle and intimate way, in contrast to his predecessors who were forced to yell their voices into the abyss of the theater. It was referred to as singing in American by music critic Henry Pleasance. It was novel, effortless, and easy to understand. Roots in jazz and bold decisions. Jazz was a major impact on Crosby's singing style. He had met Louis Armstrong early in his career and admired him. Crosby's own voice was influenced by Armstrong's tone and melodic independence. The two men hit it off and collaborated frequently throughout the years. Pennies from Heaven, the 1936 picture in which Crosby starred, was never released. Armstrong should also be included, in his opinion. Instead of dealing with Armstrong's management or footing the bill for his trip, studio boss Harry Cohn preferred to stay out of it. However, Crosby persisted. If Armstrong wasn't in it, he threatened to quit the picture. Cohn eventually caved. Because to Crosby, Armstrong was able to appear in the film and receive equal billing with his white co-stars. It was for that Armstrong expressed his gratitude later on. When Bing came around, it wasn't just for the music industry. He also helped break down racial barriers. Crosby contributed in other ways throughout World War II as well. He even recorded messages in German to demoralize the enemy and performed for troops abroad. The American troops adored him. He was known as Der Bingle by them. Indeed, a survey conducted towards the conclusion of the war revealed that Crosby had been instrumental in boosting morale among the troops. Outperforming even Bob Hope, General Eisenhower, and President Roosevelt, he garnered 8 seats. With the title Crosby, America's #1 star, an article from 1945 appeared in Life magazine. He reportedly racked up more revenue and had more fans than any other performer in history. White Christmas, his album, sold over 2 million copies in the United States. With 250,000 in the UK alone, Crosby could turn any song into a smash. According to the article, the majority of bandleaders and singers would listen to Crosby's Thursday night broadcasts and take cues from him. Daily sales in the tens of thousands of copies followed each new song he performed. Both his impact and notoriety were unparalleled. Decca and Paramount had long-term contracts with him, and his older albums were selling well even after a decade. Foreigners, fans, and soldiers alike looked to Crosby as a representative of the United States. He left an indelible mark. While Bing Crosby's public persona belies his status as a beloved icon, his private life reveals something quite different. The man at home, the man behind the fame. Alcohol was a major issue for Crosby throughout the 1920s and 1930s. He was sentenced to 60 days in prison for driving under the influence during the Prohibition era. His stint in prison served as a wake-up call, and he finally kicked his alcohol habit in 1931. But his views never wavered. During an interview with Barbara Walters in 1977, Crosby expressed his belief that marijuana ought to be legalized. He reasoned that if the government owned the market, the laws would be more effective. His admirers were taken aback by his views on the matter. But where does it leave his private life? A nightclub singer and actress named Dixie Lee was Crosby's first wife. She passed away from ovarian cancer in 1952, although they remained married until 1930. They had 4 boys total: Dennis and Gary, who are twins, Philip and Lindsay. From the outside, the Crosby family's existence in North Hollywood appeared idyllic. That, however, was not at all accurate. Throughout her life, but notably in the 1930s and 1940s, Dixie battled alcoholism. Nothing Crosby did to connect her with doctors or specialists helped. Even in January 1941, he considered asking her for a divorce, but he ultimately decided against it. It was during this period that Crosby made several attempts to avoid returning home. Concern for his children did not diminish his desire for peace. When Crosby began an affair with actress Joan Caulfield in the late 1940s and into the 1950s, things became even more difficult. In her own autobiography, actress Patricia Neal discussed this, stating that Caulfield had a profound crush on Crosby. Neal revealed that the woman had confided in him her strong desire to wed Bing Crosby. The relationship was confirmed by Betty Caulfield, Caulfield's sister, who said that Crosby had been serious about divorcing his wife. To take his divorce plans to the next level, he visited Cardinal Francis Spellman. "But Bing, you are Father O'Malley," the cardinal supposedly informed him. "And Father O'Malley can never, ever obtain a divorce." Everything shifted after that single line. Instead of divorcing Dixie, Crosby decided to stay with her. He also discussed the matter with his mom, who was vehemently against him divorcing his wife. His friendship with Caulfield ended thereafter. They never tied the knot. Attempting to assist Dixie in overcoming her addiction, he remained by her side till she passed away. Love following tragedy, however, not without controversy. It wasn't long after Dixie's death in 1952 that Crosby was no longer single. He got back into dating, and Pat Sheehan, a model, was one of his early partners. People were surprised by this because in 1958, Pat wed Dennis, Crosby's son. His most committed relationship occurred in 1957, when he wed actress Katharine Grant, although rumors of a romance with Grace Kelly and Inger Stevens circulated. They were married, and she became a Catholic before they were even married. They had 3 children: Nathaniel, Mary Frances, and Harry, Lily's 3. On Friday the 13th, Harry went on to play. Both Mary Frances and Nathaniel achieved fame after appearing on Dallas, while the former won the 1981 U.S. Amateur Golf Championship. His second marriage appeared more tranquil than his first, but Crosby's infidelity loomed large, particularly his affair with Caulfield, which nearly caused him to abandon his wife. Violet and Mary Barca, 2 sisters who documented Crosby's New York activities in their journals from 1945 and 1946, state that Crosby was frequently seen with Caulfield. They enjoyed operas, banquets, and the theater. Mother Caulfield was there at a number of those gatherings as well. A married movie star who prioritized his family over Caulfield was someone she confessed to liking in 1954, years after the fact. It was obvious that dude was Crosby. Although Crosby maintained an impeccable public persona throughout his career, he had a tumultuous private life. Relationships in Bing's life were never easy, whether due to emotional distance, marital strife, or secret romances. And speaking of which, his paternal life was far more troubling. His children and father were terrified. People started to forget Bing Crosby as a kind and caring dad after his 1977 death. Going My Own Way was the title of the 1983 book released by his eldest son, Gary. It was there that Gary revealed his story of childhood abuse. Because of his excessive weight, Crosby had given him the moniker Bucket Butt. According to Gary, he was made to weigh himself weekly. If he had put on weight, he would be dragged hunched over into his father's office and pummeled until he bled. And that was just the beginning. The Crosby children were threatened with punishment unless they finished their food. Gary told a particularly disturbing anecdote. Philip, his brother, once attempted to devour some bacon and eggs by burying them beneath the rug. Crosby insisted that he consume the dish once it was later discovered. Caked with grime, with hairs and everything. Gary's siblings had varying reactions to the novel. Lindsay said, "I hope it clears up a lot of the old lies." Philip called Gary a crybaby, but admitted, "Was happy to be who I was, even if I had the hell kicked out of me." These reactions showed just how deep the pain ran in the Crosby home. Gary's book wasn't just a personal story. It opened a door. For years, Bing Crosby had been the voice of calm, peace, and comfort to millions. But for his own children, he was the source of fear. A man who beat his sons and controlled their every move. This side of Crosby shocked fans. The same man who sang White Christmas with warmth and love was now being talked about as a violent, controlling father. And the worst part? These stories came not from enemies or outsiders, but from his own family. His legacy as a father became one of pain, silence, and scars that didn't fade with time. To the public, Bing Crosby was a clean-cut, smooth-voiced icon. He sang White Christmas, played a kind priest in the bells of St. Mary's, and became America's favorite entertainer. But behind the curtain, his life was far from perfect. FBI documents that surfaced in the late 90s revealed something shocking. Crosby had connections to known mobsters. He was also a serial gambler, always looking for the next illegal card game. In fact, he once paid off a $10,000 threat just to stay safe. One of his gambling buddies was Mo Dalitz, a mob frontman. Crosby even invited him to go hunting at his ranch in Nevada. Another name that popped up was Jack Machine Gun McGurn, a suspected gunman in the St. Valentine's Day massacre. Crosby's biographer said, Crosby just loved golf. He didn't care who he played with. The FBI saw a troubling pattern in Hollywood. In one 1930s memo, Agent Clyde Tolson said racketeers were preying upon prominent persons in showbiz. Names like Bugsy Siegel and Frank Nitti were mentioned. Crosby never faced charges, but the stories didn't stop. In 1947, police raided a gambling joint in Burbank, California. Crosby and Bob Hope were there. They were let go quietly, but the moment was real. Hope joked about Crosby's luck with racehorses, saying, "I got it from the horse's mouth. Look what happened." And there were darker stories too. One man claimed he was handcuffed, beaten, and tossed into a car after an argument with Crosby. He said Dixie Lee, Crosby's first wife, was there during the gambling spree. Crosby's temper was real. His nights were loud, risky, and far from the sweet image fans knew. And if that wasn't enough, he received death threats. One angry message said, "I hate your guts, you bastard. You will have to send me all of your money for what you did to me." The letter never explained what Crosby had done, but it showed that danger followed him, even in silence. His loved ones he abandoned. What was occurring at home did not align with Crosby's public persona as a parent. Even while he spoke about love and peace and smiled for the cameras, his kids were going through something far harsher. Going My Own Way was published by Gary Crosby in 1983. It detailed his troubled upbringing. The names bucket, butt, fatso, and stupid were among the derogatory terms used by Gary's father. Gary, who battled with weight as a child, was made to stand on a scale once a week. If the figure increased, he was hauled naked to Crosby's office and slapped until he bled. Crosby would not abide any disobedience at the dinner table, and the beatings were frequent. I found one story very unsettling. Philip, according to Gary, once buried eggs and bacon under a rug. Days after it had been lost, Crosby insisted that he consume it, including hairs, dust, and filth. Gary's brothers and sisters had varying reactions. "I think it dispels a lot of the old misconceptions," Lindsay added. Philip referred to Gary as a crybaby, but he confessed that he was content with his identity regardless of the backlash he received. Mary, Crosby's daughter, was another participant. If she continued to live with a man outside of marriage, her father threatened to cut her off, she alleged. These weren't your average domestic quarrels. The emotional wounds were deep. "Is it expected of me to pretend I've loved him my whole life?" Gary once asked. The line conveyed everything. The tunes their father sung were not matched by the pain they felt. The family lived in silence and terror behind closed walls. And when Crosby departed to bask in his stardom and fortune, those behind home were left to fend for themselves. Bing Crosby continued performing even as he aged. His health, however, was deteriorating. He battled a life-threatening lung ailment in 1974. After that, he got better and returned to the workforce after a hiatus. However, things were not easy during the return. He hurt his back after falling off the stage at a CBS concert special titled Bing 50th Anniversary Gala on March 20, 1977. His recovery from his hospital stay took 1 month. On August 16, 1977, the same day Elvis Presley passed away, he performed for the first time following the accident. Crosby gave a concert at California's Concord Pavilion that same night. He persisted in singing despite the lack of a microphone when the power went out mid-set. As moving as it was also one of his final performances in the United States. He took a plane to Norway to perform a TV concert later in August. His family and Rosemary Clooney joined him on a tour of the United Kingdom in September. Seasons, his last album, was recorded around this time, along with filming his final Christmas special for television. The duet he performed with David Bowie was a highlight of the taping. Crosby performed at the Brighton Centre in England for the final time on October 10th. There was Gracie Fields in the crowd. The following day, he headed to a recording studio to capture 8 tracks for the BBC. Once in a While was his last song to be recorded. He also posed for the record cover pictures the same afternoon. His expression betrayed his impending misery. Things took a dramatic turn just 4 days afterwards. An abrupt farewell and the last game. It was October 13th, 1977, when Bing Crosby traveled solo to Spain. For neither music nor work was he present. Playing golf and bird hunting were his main objectives. He teed off at the La Moraleja golf course, close to Madrid, on October 14th. Accompanying him on the field were Manuel Pinero, the World Cup champion, Cesar de Zelida, the club president, and Valentin Barrios. Reports indicated that Crosby was in a pleasant mood. Construction workers in the area recognized him and eventually requested a song. Singing Strangers in the Night, while grinning, Crosby performed the song live. According to his golfing partner, Crosby exuded an air of calm vitality. He had a great game that day and came out on top, beating the competition by a single stroke. "That was an excellent round of golf, everyone," Crosby remarked with a smile as they made their way back to the clubhouse. "I propose we get a Coke and go have a drink." His final remarks were those. He came to a halt some 20 yards from the stadium. He had a heart attack and passed away immediately. Despite efforts by both the course's medical staff and the ambulance's crew, they were unable to revive him. He was declared dead after receiving the last Catholic ceremonies at Regina Victoria Hospital. a 74-year-old man he was. His funeral was held in Los Angeles' St. Paul the Apostle Catholic Church on October 18th. Following the private funeral, he was laid to rest at Culver City's Holy Cross Cemetery. Strangely, the incorrect birth year was marked on his grave. Like his existence, his demise also left many wondering. Secrets had always been his strong suit. His personality, his habits, and his hidden life events. The man's demise was as swift, final, and enigmatic as he was. Tell me which aspect of his hidden life was the most shocking to you, and for what reason? Should Bing Crosby's covert actions alter the way people remember him today? Leave a comment with your ideas. For more amazing tales from the intriguing past of Hollywood, make sure to like, subscribe, and stay tuned. Until we meet again.